Chapter 38, Leviathan. The struts leading to the airship were vibrating like piano strings, pulsing in time with the engine, the metal shivering in his hand, and Alec held tight against the icy winds, climbing quickly past the startling master engineer. "Where are we going?" the man shouted. Alec didn't answer, his gaze fixed on the ground slipping past below him. He couldn't see how Dylan scrambled about on those ropes so casually. The leather safety harness was the Darwinists wore hardly seemed thick enough to hold a man's weight. Of course, they probably were made of fabricated leather, but that was only more unnerving. The cilia rippled wildly on the creature's flank, an ocean of shimmering grass, the ratlines fluttering in the wind. At least he wouldn't have to dare the ropes. The struts led straight to an access hatch, which sat between the two ribs, supporting the engine's weight. Alec crawled through and headed down. After the freezing wind outside, the warmth of the creature's innards were welcoming, even with its odd and bitter smells. The ribs had a set of cross ties between them, so Alec could imagine he was simply climbing down the ladder instead of crawling beneath the skin of a huge beast. He'd been a fool not to realize that Volger would snuggle everything he could aboard the airship. The man never stopped scheming, never left the next step unplanned. Volger's preparation for this war had taken 15 years after all. He wasn't going to leave a quarter ton of gold behind without a fight. Alec reached the bottom of the ladder, then dropped through another hatch into a main gondola. But then he paused, looking up and down and the swaying corridors of the ship. Where was Volger's cabin? Working all night on the engines, Alec hadn't even slept in his. It didn't help his sense of direction that crewmen were running everywhere, carrying furniture and spare uniforms to be tossed overboard. Then he noticed that the gondola floor was tipped slightly to the left. Of course, the cabins they'd been given were all on the port side and toward the bow. So the gold was dragging down the airship's nose. He ran forward until he spotted the familiar corridor. He threw open the door of Volger's cabin. It was empty except for a bed, a storage locker, and the Stormwalker's wireless receiver on the desk. Volger hadn't left the gold in plain view. Of course he hadn't. Alec pulled out the desk drawer, but found nothing. The locker held only clothes and weapons from the castle stores. Dropping to the floor, he spotted a map case under the bed. Alec reached underneath and tried to drag it out, but it wouldn't budge, as heavy as the solid block of iron. He braced his feet on the bed and pulled at the case with both hands, but it still wouldn't move. Then Alec realized that the bed had to be far lighter than the gold and flung it aside. But the latches of the map case were locked. He'd had to throw the whole thing out. Alex stood and pushed open the window, then tried to pick up the case. It wouldn't lift a centimeter off the ground. It was far too heavy. "God's wounds," he swore, kicking at the lock. "Looking for this?" Alec looked up. Count Volger stood in the doorway holding a key. "Give me that, or we'll all die." "Well, obviously. Why do you think I'm here?" Volger shut the door and crossed the room. "Beastly business getting down from those engine pods." "But why?" Volger knelt by the map case. Klopp needed some translating. "No," Alec groaned. "Why did you do this? Bring along a vast fortune of gold? I should think that would be self-evident." Volger unlocked the case with a flick of the key, then opened it. The gold bars shone dully, a dozen of them, more than 200 kilograms. Volger lifted a bar with both hands, grunting as he hurled it through the window. They both leaned forward, watching it flash in the sunlight as it fell. Well, that's 70,000 kroner gone, Volker said. Alec bent and lifted one, the muscles in his hand screaming as he heaved it up and out. You almost got us all killed. Are you mad? Mad? Volker grunted, lifting another bar. For trying to save what little of your inheritance you haven't already thrown away? This is an airship, Volker. Every gram makes a difference. Alec pulled another bar from the case. And you bring gold bullion aboard? I didn't think the Darwinists would cut it so close, Volker grunted again, another gold bar spinning away. And just imagine how pleased you'd have been if I'd been right, Alec groaned, working alongside the Leviathan crew. He had absorbed the airman's mania about weight, but Volker thought in terms of heavy cannon and armored walkers. Alec pushed another bar through the window. Only 6 left. But we may as well finish the job, Volker said. Throw it all out, like the walker and the castle and 10 years' worth of supplies. So that's what this is all about, Alec said, lifting another bar. That I've thrown away all your hard work? Don't you realize we've gained something more important? What could be more important than your birthright? Allies. Alec pushed the gold bar out the window. As it fell, he thought he felt the deck level beneath him. Maybe this was working. Allies? Volker snorted, then lifted another bar and flung it out. So your new friends are worth throwing away everything your father left you? Not everything, Alec said. All my life, you and my father prepared me for this war. Thanks to that, I don't have to hide from it. Come on, there are only 4 left. The 2 of us can lift them all at once. Still too heavy, Volker shook his head. Your father was an idealist and a romantic, and it cost him dearly. I always hoped you'd inherit a bit of your mother's pragmatism. Alec looked down at the case. Only 4 gold bars. He wondered what a boy like Dylan would say to such a fortune. Maybe it wasn't entirely mad that what Volker had done. Well, he said, perhaps we could have 1. Volker smiled as he knelt, pulling one of the bars out and sliding it back under the bed. There may be hope for you after all, Alec. Shall we? Alec knelt across from him, and together they heaved the case up, Volker's face turning red in the effort. Alec felt his own muscles throbbing in his arms. Finally, the case was resting on the windowsill. Alec took a step back, then threw himself against the case as hard as he could, the last 3 bars spilling out as they fell toward the snow, spinning wildly and glittering with sunlight. Alec felt Volker's grip on his shoulder, as if the man thought he would go tumbling after them. The airship pitched up beneath Alec's feet, rolling to starboard as the weight of his father's gold fell away. But I truly didn't think it would matter. Not on a ship this huge. Volker said quietly, I never meant to endanger you, Alec. I know that, Alec sighed. Everything you've done has been to protect me. But I've chosen a different path now, one less safe. Either you recognize that or we part ways when the ship lands. Count Volker took a deep, slow breath, then bowed. I remain at your service, your serene highness. Alec rolled his eyes and started to say more, but a light flickered outside and they both leaned out the window again. Flares were acing up from the ground. The Leviathan had reached the first German scout. Their mortars were firing, sending bright cinders aloft. Alec breathed in the sharp, familiar scent of phosphorus, and the rubble of nearby cannons reached his ears. I just hope we weren't too late. And here they are, throwing away the last 3 gold bars out the window. I don't know about you, but I don't know if I could do that.